Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to go over part 2 of the Symphony of Cute Animals by Kanoko Agusa, and we're coloring this page. Now we left off with our banister, so if you haven't seen part 1, I'll leave it in the description box and you can start there. Otherwise, grab your Brutfuner Squares and let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you're enjoying this color along. You've probably done this because I warned you not to forget this little bat, but I did, so I'm going to pop in here and get it colored up. So moving along, we're going to do the exact same thing to these bat wings. I am simply using this blue as a base layer for the bat wing itself so that when we go over it with black, it doesn't look flat. It has a little bit of that blue tone popping out, and it's just going to make it look, I think, a little more interesting. So you just want to use a light hand here, and you can see that I didn't go over all of it towards the top. That's where the black is really going to shine through. So did you all have a lot of trick-or-treaters? We live on a cul-de-sac and we don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters. I bet we had maybe 7 doorbell rings with maybe 10 kids total, most of which live on the cul-de-sac. So this is pretty common. I don't know. When I first moved into this neighborhood, we were the young couple on the block. Now we're one of the older couples. But so it's always been that way. And I honestly thought as we got more kids in our cul-de-sac, we would then get more kids trick-or-treating. But I don't know. Maybe kids don't trick-or-treat like they used to anymore. I know where my son lives, they do a lot of trunk-or-treat type of situations, which is fine, I guess. You know, you got to roll with the times. Some of us that are older, I don't know. It seems sad to me to kind of give up the adventure and fun of trick-or-treating, and I guess it's a different world that we live in, and so this isn't me judging what people do. It's just me being nostalgic for the way things were. I always enjoyed it. My friends always enjoyed it as well. It was just a time to get together. We usually had a little party afterwards at somebody's house with pizza and pop, and we ate too much candy and just enjoyed the night. Being in Wyoming, it was always cold. But we logged some miles too. I lived in a small town, so nothing was out of bounds for us. So we tried to hit as much as possible. I always came home with a big bag, and of course, had to pay the taxes to my mom and give her favorite candies or whatever, which I think still is pretty common. But Ellie always enjoys it. It gives her a really good chance to bark a lot. So, but you can see now I'm kind of going back over this with the Deep Lagoon because I really want that blue to kind of not be the highlight per se. Like, I don't... I'm so sorry. I guess I stayed up too late for Halloween. I don't want this blue to be the highlight, meaning when you look at the wings you think, why do they have blue wings? But it's almost like people that have really dark black hair and they can have almost that blue sheen to it. That's kind of what I'm going for here. And I'm really deepening up the black along the rib of the wing, just to draw emphasis to it. And then you know, smoothing it back out a little bit. Now next up with this little bunny, the artist has left us with these little black lines to show where darker patches of fur might be. And then I'm taking a little bit of license myself in where I want to put it. Now this is that same light brown that we used in the fireplace and in the banister. But I think that just kind of ties it all together. And then I'm using this gray for other little patches of fur and to add a little interest to her. And then I'm going to go over her entirely with white. But here I add this lighter, the hay color, which is on the walls actually. So you can see I'm using similar colors throughout the picture in different ways and in different combinations. They look different. Here they're just the shadows, so to speak. And I'm going to go over the entire thing with white, blending it out. And you can see as I blend, it kind of smears those hay and the Thai curry and all of that. And so it just makes her look a little beige without coloring the entire image beige. Now I did put the white down first because if I would have went in with super pink first, I feel like her ears would have been too pink. So by doing the white first, I've really diluted that pink. Now I'm going in with sepia and just deepening up my shadows and just adding a little bit of color here and there. Once again along the edges and then blending it all out again. You can see I didn't do much, but it adds a little bit of interest. Okay, so I wasn't really liking how these candles were turning out, so I went in with this Thai curry and added a little bit to the tips of the wax, just for a little interest, and adding a little bit of gray for the shadow effect. I just didn't really like how they turned out. Adding a little sepia for the same reason, just random little dots here and there to indicate like shadows. Okay, next up we're going to start with our cake. You can see I use this color a lot in this color along. But basically I put a base layer of this Thai curry down. I feel like it's a nice little cake-like color. Just with a light hand. I like having a little bit of the white of the paper showing through. To me it just kind of makes it look a little textured. And I'm going around the edges of the insides of the donuts and of the outside there, indicating where maybe the frosting hadn't quite covered things. Now I'm going in with sepia and just dotting. I'm just making little dots on the cake, just to indicate that it's a textured cake. Now you can also add a little bit of shadowing, which I think I do. Yeah, here I'm jumping ahead of myself. But just along the edge of the frosting, kind of down at the bottom of the cake. And you can see that just added a little dimension there. Just sharpening my pencil up so that I can get in those little nooks and crannies. I decided I had grabbed the wrong pencil. But I decided I wanted one more layer of this Thai curry just to smooth it all out. Now, if you've watched this segment, you can skip ahead because I did release this in slow motion, or not slow motion, but more in real time for my color along tutorial. But for those of you that didn't watch the tutorial, what I'm doing here is putting in my highlights. This is where I'm going to save these little, the rectangle and the square there. I'm going to save them as white. And I'm going to go in with this shaved chocolate tone. And I don't cover the entire donut. And then I go in with mink and just cover it all over. Now, I chose mink because it has a lot of red tone to it. And that's kind of what you want because chocolate donuts have some red in them. If you're using Prismacolor, mahogany red would be a really good choice here. And then I kind of go over everything with the white, and that blends it out, and it gives it a little bit of, I don't know, like the glazed look, which you could keep it like that. But I decided I wanted a little more shading, so I went in with this seal brown, which is kind of a grayer brown. But any dark brown would work. And then back to my original color that I started with. And you can see that when you tie that all together, you end up with kind of a shiny glazed donut. So I am going to skip ahead, and I will catch you when the cake is done. Okay, so starting with our tablecloth, I am going to base where I want the darkest creases and the shadows of the folds of the tablecloth in this forged iron. So I'm just laying in this color before we put in our purples, because there wasn't a purple in the Brutfuners that I thought was dark enough. So when you do these kind of things, you want to think about where would the shadows be. So the shadows are going to be in between all of these objects on the table. So we're going to have some darkness in there. So all up in that area. And then picture on the sides, I'll show you where you want to put the darks. But up here on the top, it's just underneath this duck's bill. His bill would kind of block the light. The donut would block the light. The little bunny arm would block it. Now here, where the material gathers is going to be darker because it's kind of bunched up together. And then where each of those lines is will be a deep crease, because that is where the fold is. And then in between those two lines is where your highlight's going to be. So you want to go in with your darker color here, like in the pinches of the fabric, and you know where that cloth kind of dips in a little bit. And we will go back and deepen it up in a second. Now I really wanted to extend that a little bit. Because I want the highlights to be a lot lighter and the darks to be a lot darker. Now, I am no expert in this, guys. I would encourage you to pull up like fabric folds or something like that and use some references and kind of get a feel for it. I am happy with how mine turned out, but I'm sure true artists would look at it and cringe. But I am doing this, as I've always said, I want to have fun, and while I want to challenge myself to learn and to improve, I do the best that I can with the skill set that I have in the moment, and I do my best to learn. And, you know, I'm not going for ultra realism here, so keep that in mind if you're trying to truly learn. You know, there are much better artists that have went to school or just have a gift. But overall, I'm very happy with the way it turned out, and I'm telling you the concept, I don't think my concept is wrong. You know, it's just a matter of, just because you know how to shoot a free throw and hold your hands and to bend your knees and to do all the things doesn't mean you can execute it until you've shot a bunch of free throws, right? So that's what we're doing here. We're breaking that barrier and we're putting color to paper, and this is improving our skills every time we color. So this is the darkest of the purples, and you can see why I wanted to add that darkness, because it is still a pretty bright purple in my opinion. And I do believe I add some black to this as well. But basically anywhere that I've laid down that forged iron, I am just extending out from that with this darker purple, so that my colors are going to blend from that darkest color and continue to get lighter as I add colors. So kind of go, and I am going over that gray color. Now make sure that you don't cover the whole table with this color. We want to leave some room for our next colors. But I decided I wanted to extend it out a little bit more there, and even bring up the darkness here on this side. And you can see, I know it's sped up, but you can see where I kind of pause and pull back and take a look and see what it's looking like to me, and do I like it. So I go to my next lightest color. There's going to be 3 purple colors, the forged gray, and then I do believe I go in with black as well. So this is our second darkest color, or our second lightest color, depending on if you're a glass half full or glass half empty kind of girl. But we're just extending that out quite a bit more, because our lightest color, I want to just have a very small, I saw that I missed a spot here, that's why I switched to the darker again. And then I'm back to the next darkest. But you can see I really pull it out, and I'm not leaving a whole lot of white, because at this point the white that I leave is going to be for our highlight color, which is a much lighter purple. And I want the overall tablecloth to read dark, not light, or rich, or whatever you want to say. It's not going to be dark per se, but I don't want you to go, oh, it's a lavender tablecloth. I want it to be purple. So here with this deep lavender, we're going over all of our remaining open spaces. I'm not getting crazy, about getting every single little thing, because I'm going to go over all of this again with all the colors. This is our first layer. And this is really common unless you're doing a technique where you're blending and you are burnishing as you go. And that is one way you could approach this. You could take that darker color. I find it a lot harder to do with pencils that are oil-based, or that are more layering pencils like polychromos. Even though these are soft pencils, I feel like they're much more layering than they are blending. Personally, I limit most of my blending to Prismacolor, just simply because Prismacolor is perfect for blending, and while you can layer with them, I prefer to blend with them, whereas these kind of pencils I tend to layer more. Now I'm going in with this black because it just wasn't dark enough purple for me, much like we did with our cat's cape. I'm pretty sure we've colored that. I hope I'm not talking about something we haven't done yet. But that's the downfall to doing voiceovers. It is way too hard for me to do a color along of this size and do it in real time, because if I mess up the vocals, it doesn't always match up to what I'm coloring, and that gets weird, and vice versa. If I want to skip ahead or edit differently in order, and I've done it in real time talking, it can get very complicated, and it can be very confusing for the reader. Now, simple color alongs, we can do that, or if I do a color along where I'm not showing you 100%, maybe I show you how to color one donut, and then when you next pick up with the color along the donuts, the rest of the donuts are colored. Many people have asked me in the comments to show everything, so this is how I find it easiest to do that. So now that we've got all of our black down, we're going back over it with this dark purple. This is our deepest tone, and I find that the difference is very dramatic at this point. Look at the difference in how this turns out, as opposed to if we just tried to do 4 layers of this heliotrope. The bottom line is you would fill in all of the white space, but it wouldn't look darker. You're not changing your value. And by adding the black, we are changing the value. And I find that that's really important for a picture to look interesting. If all of your tones are middle tones, meaning you don't have any darks, you don't have any lights, you just have pictures that are colored just with colors, right? I don't know if that made sense. But without any shading, without any... And it's not even about shading, because shading is a technique. But when you don't have dark tones and light tones in a picture, even if you do single color pictures where you have red flowers with green leaves, if you add some black and some white to your picture, or really light value tones and dark value tones to your picture, it will be more interesting regardless of shading. So don't confuse the two. Oftentimes shading can add value, but they're not the same thing. I could have shaded, I guess, to make my... Hopefully I'm not confusing the living crap out of you. If I were to just shade this with the heliotrope, the petunia, and the deep lavender, we would have had 3 different tones of purple, right? Or 3 different, what people call shades of purple. That would have been shaded, but not necessarily a value shift. Or the value shift would have been slight. By bringing in the black and the forged iron, I have forced a value shift here. So I hope that that makes sense. And by no means do I feel like I'm expert in in this, because there are people out there that just innately know how to do these kind of things and create these stunning pictures. And I struggle with that, especially with a really big picture like this one, to find that cohesiveness. And so you'll often see me use the same colors and to mix colors to create another color. I'll show you where I do the suckers by mixing colors as opposed to bringing in a red. I'm going to kind of create a brown red using the colors that I've already been using. That's how I'm trying to add the cohesiveness, and I hope it worked. But overall, I'm very happy with how this tablecloth turned out. It is much more what I was looking for. I really like the dark in the creases and the lavender in the lights to bring out that the dimension of the folds and the values. maybe that's something that we can do, you know, a little video on, to where I can break it down and show you instead of just talking it through in terms of value. But I have sharpened my pencil, and this time I actually used my Doll 133 to get a really, really fine point, because I just want a very fine edge of black. And in most of these, I'm only going down, about halfway. Some a third of the way, some a little. And then I go in and kind of shade it up a little bit here at the top. Just kind of blending it to where I don't have a stark, edge halfway down this skirting, right? I want the skirting to be quite a bit darker than the actual tablecloth. So just finish up with the black, blend it out a little bit, smooth your ends down to where it'll blend a little better, and then we're going to come back in with our purples. Now, I do think it's important to do this step of going down the line. I think it helps to add just a little bit more dimension to this piece. You could skip it if you'd like. I also think it helps with the shading. But I just wanted this skirting to be a darker color, that darker purple. So I'm not going to use the lightest tone in this. I'm going to go in with the dark tone, the heliotrope. I will go over the entire thing with that. Not the entire thing, about 2/3. So about where we left off with our black is where I'm going to leave off with this purple. And then I'm going to go in with the petunia and cover everything remaining and blending up into those darker tones. I won't cover the entire thing with petunia because I definitely want the top to remain dark. But I'm not going to add any of the lavender because overall I want this piece to just read almost black purple or purple black. Very dark purple. You know what I'm saying. So here I'm going back to the cat's cape. And now that the tablecloth is done and I see how it turned out, now I can finish the cape on the cat. Now some might say, well, why didn't you finish it while you were working on it? And we could have, for sure. But because I want those two elements to balance each other, and because the tablecloth is so much bigger, I wanted to wait and see, did I want it to look a little lighter? Did I want it to be as dark as the tablecloth? What did the overall picture need? So in my experience, you can always go back in and add another layer. I can add another layer of this. I can add another layer of black. I can burnish it out with a lighter color. I have a lot of options at this point because I haven't done the final layers on this cape. Once you do, then you're obligated. And I wanted to make sure that I was consistent between these two pieces. So that is a personal choice. Also because pencils like Brutfuner lend themselves to layering, and pencils like Prismacolor are better for what I call blending, which is what you see when people, they go in dark and burnish and then fade out a little bit and then add their next color, and they literally add it to a burnish level, fade out a little bit, and just keep adding colors all the way to the end. And that's a great way of coloring. It's just I don't find it particularly what's the word? I wouldn't say beneficial, but it's harder to do with pencils like the Brutfuner Squares. They're soft, and I think they lay down a lot of pigment, and I enjoy using them, but I don't feel like they're smushy like a Prismacolor. And I think that the smushier ones are better. That's a real word, by the way, smushy. I think that pencils like Prismacolor do better with blending. And I feel like these more oily based, and I understand all pencils are oil and wax and binder based, but what people generally think of as oily pencils are the ones like the Brutfuner, and I think they do better with layering. So it's a personal choice. You certainly could finish this cape all at once, especially since you have the benefit of doing a color along. If you're watching the entire thing and then are going to go back and color it, I highly encourage you to finish it all at once. But because I am literally coloring this as I go, this is why I chose to do that. Now here I'm going over everything with this super pink. I am putting a little bit of super pink in each one of the segments of the wings. I am going to be bringing in virtually every color of the rainbow to these wings and then blending them out. But while I got the pink in my hand, I go ahead and do that. Now, just like with the tablecloth, I consider this piece right here on the left-hand side to be a little bit darker. I did put a piece of paper. I find it easier to work with a piece of paper underneath when you're working on the edge. Also, if you are not doing a color along in which you're filming, I highly encourage you to flip your book. That's what I would be doing if I wasn't doing a color along. But it's hard on the viewer when I go flipping the book and you get kind of discombobulated, and it doesn't feel great as a viewer. So I tend to want to work just straight up and down. Once in a while I have no choice, but in this case it's just a little more awkward, and I would encourage you to move this book to your liking so that you get the best results. But I am going to go in with a darker color and add some shading, much like we did with the tablecloth with the folds of her dress. So this particular one, I have chosen that this is going to be the fold that is behind, and the one to the left and the one to the right of the darker segment are laying on top. So that's how I read this. In this particular case, I don't really think it much matters. You could have picked a different fold to be the darker one. She doesn't have super defined folds, but because that one I felt like definitely tucked behind, that's the way I went with it. Now I do put in a little bit of dark along anywhere that two pieces of fabric meet, such as the wings in the back, or the little belt and the bodice, and then where the sleeve kind of tucks into that little, I don't know, jumper or whatever she's wearing. I can't really tell if this is just a blouse sleeve or if she has a dress over a shirt. But, you know, there's a lot you could have done with this. I chose to keep it pretty simple. I'm blending it out with white just to blend in that pink pencil, just to smooth it out, essentially. But you certainly could have done more shading. You could have brought in another color. You could have made the contrast a lot greater. I just didn't. Now here, let's start with the wings. I already did the pink, so I'm showing you all the colors I'm going to bring in. Now what you want to be careful of is when you put these colors in, I am actually kind of blending them together. So like the pink with the yellow makes a nice pretty orange color. So it's okay to blend those. What you don't want to do is put your complementary colors blended to each other. So for example, don't put this blue right next to an orange. Don't put the purple or the lavender next to the yellow, and don't put the green next to the pink, because those kind of colors tend to make grays and browns and a little bit muddier colors. And we want these colors to be fun and bright because these are their little fairy wings. So I just go in with each one of these, just really random, and just adding little spots of color, adding big spots here and little spots there. Now you could go in, if you wanted the effect to be a little lighter, you could have started with white and colored everything in with white and then put your colors in, and you would have had a lot more pastel type of tones. Or if you don't care and you have a set of like macarons or something like that, pull out some of those muted pastels. I think they would be beautiful here. But essentially, I am using every one of these colors that I put in these wings is also in the picture, and I do feel like that once again adds to the cohesion of the page. Now, truly, these white spots, some of these smaller white spots, you could have just blended those out, but a couple of those were a little bit bigger, so I wanted to add some other colors. So I'm going to go back in and kind of finish making sure I get all the white spots, so to speak. But I don't see anything wrong if you have some white spots. Now next up, I'm going to use Prismacolor White. I know I'm a little ahead here. Maybe I'll wait. Hurry up, Wendy. We're waiting on you. Okay, so I do choose to use Prismacolor white. I highly recommend, if you don't have at least this pencil in your arsenal, that you get one. Now, Holbein makes a great white pencil, as does Luminance, but Prismacolor is readily available. Almost always you can find these at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and they're like $1, $1.29 maybe. Sometimes you can get them on sale, but stock up on these because they make great blenders and they're really nice white pencils. I just find them super helpful. Some people like to blend everything with white. I don't, because I do feel like it kind of mutes it a little bit. So it's the beginning of November, so I am sure you have colored your fair share of pumpkins. So I'm going to zip through that and I'll see you on the end. Okay, so I chose to color this kind of like, I don't know, a slushy, I guess. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but that's how I'm coloring it. And I assume that whatever's in this bowl is what's in the cups. So I chose kind of this Halloween green. This is also the color I chose for these geese. So we're going to color this one just like we did our first goose. So one of the things that I'm thinking of, I got a lot of requests for individual short tutorials, which I think is interesting because every time I post one, they don't get a lot of interaction on the channel. And so not really sure if that's, one of those things that you want it available, but you're not really watching it until you need it, or what. But what I thought I would do is in the upcoming month, I'm going to kind of have a prepare for Christmas, and I'm going to be going through some Christmas, how to color Santa's coat, how to color Santa's fur, how to color an ornament, a shiny ornament, how to color berries and holly, and some of the things that you're going to find a lot on your Christmas pages. Snow, ice, things like that. So I thought I would do a little segment of pictures or tutorials that are like that. Let me know in the comments if you think that this would be helpful. But I was thinking, most people want to start coloring Christmas. Well, there's always those that want to color it way early, but for the most part, towards the end of November, people start ramping up for Christmas. So I want to have the tutorials done ahead of time and post them in November so that in December you have the arsenal to color confidently, all the different elements that come out on a page. So that is my plan right now. And so I will probably start doing some different Christmas tutorials and little short, just shorter tutorials for a while, and maybe put off doing a full color along until a little later in the month. We'll see, because, squirrel. And I may decide that I want to do another color along right away. Because I do like doing color alongs and I love having the finished pages, but I also want to be mindful of what people are looking for on the channel, and that is something that was pretty highly requested, and of course it's something that I plan on doing not just seasonally but for other elements as well. But I thought with Christmas coming up, people would want to have some of those things, just maybe even a refresher course, or just to see the way I do it, because I may color it different than you normally would, or than different people on other channels. So look for that in the coming weeks. Now with these capes, there really isn't any like, oh, the light's shining here, so this is why I left that little highlighted area. I mainly did it just as a point of interest, just so that it wasn't a solid green, same color little cape or whatever. And I really like the striping. I think that that is a fun little element on these geese. So next up is this little cat. This is where I initially got the idea to use this kind of reddish purple. I just felt like I wanted another color, you know, another Halloween color. And I didn't, red is kind of a Halloween color, or yellow sometimes is, but I didn't feel like those were really the colors I wanted to bring into this picture. I kind of like the little bit of, I don't know, they're almost tropical kind of colors. You know, they're vibrant colors. I do tend to gravitate towards the brighter colors. I absolutely love, like when I see on Instagram or Pinterest or something where somebody's used the olive tones and the muted colors. And I do try because I really like how they turn out. I struggle to do it myself. Not sure why, but basically I'm using the exact same two colors that we used in the little bunny's dress. And I'm just making his cuffs and his little collar and the lighter stripes of his hat with this lighter pink. Part of that is because I pictured an orange tabby cat. So I was like, well, what would go with that, right? And I already had the green in other places, and I thought that this went well. And overall, I'm pleased with the results. So I went in with white first just because I really wanted this to be a little bit lighter pink. Because I'm going to go in, I think I put polka dots in it, if I remember right. But I might not. I know I toyed with the idea of putting polka dots in there. Here I'm trying to lighten up his little cuff, but I've already went over it with the pink, so it's fine. So I'm just blending it all out really well. So at this point, this is kind of the burnishing step where we're pressing a little bit harder and making sure that we got all the little white spots out of our page, or out of the, you know, out of the color that we're working on. Okay, so starting with our darker tones, just like we did with the other cat, we're going to go in and we're going to go over the artist's lines where she put these little dark hash marks or whatever to indicate that this is where the darker colors go. This is where the shadows are. I'm using this to depict where the darker colors of the cat are. So pictured like, you know, an orange tabby cat. So now going in with raw sienna, I'm going directly over the top of that sepia, but I'm also going outside of it, so a little bit wider with this color. But I'm not closing the gaps here. I'm not going too far out. I want these to be, you know, the shadowed areas or the darker areas, not the overall cat. Now that right there is sepia, because I forgot to do his little paw. And here's the raw sienna. So next up is this bone brown. So a much more yellow tone, because if you look at tabby cats, like the orange ones, they're really just as much yellowish. They're a very yellow orange. Make sure you do the paw, because of course I forgot. There I go. Good job, Wendy. And then I go in with this anise flower, which is just, we hadn't used this color yet, but this is just a very light yellow. I felt like the hay was a little too not yellow enough for this, so I brought in that extra color. Then I felt like that was a little, I don't know, too yellow. I wanted a little more brown. So I went in with that Thai curry, you know, the color I used throughout the entire picture. And I'm just kind of blending it all out. Once again, not getting 100%. I'm leaving some white, especially around his little face, like around his nose and mouth area. I want those to be a little more white. Going back over it with the lightest tone just to blend it all out. So I guess I didn't want those to be white because I blended it all out. But by leaving it light, then when I went in with my final burnishing, it only got one coat of even this anise flower, which is a really, really light color. But if you put two coats on it, it can make it more pronounced. Okay, so we're doing his little nose. I went over it with white because I don't want it very bright pink. And then I left just a little tinge pink and went over the rest of it with black. Here I'm filling out all the slushies, giving them all some green drink. So just giving it two layers there. Now if you ever look at a cat's tongue, they're kind of gray and kind of pink, so that's kind of what I was going for there. I didn't want it to be a super red tongue. Now just like with the other goose, we're adding just a little bit of shading on the artist lines there, and then we'll go over it with white and then the orange for the string and everything. So I'll see you in a minute. All right. So how are we doing? How's your picture coming out? Are you liking it? Let me know in the comments. So these candles I'm going in just with the green and going every other one. You could do these in whatever color you wanted, really. Any of the colors that we have introduced. I chose green just because, you know, the candles are going to have a little orange in the flame. The little candies to the left are going to be orange. The pumpkin's orange. So I just felt like green was a nice contrast there. Now this cute little guy, I'm going in with this hay on his face because these dogs have like that beige and then they have black right around their face. I just love his little expression. He's like, huh? So I just thought that was really cute. And look, I'm proud of myself. I managed to remember to color the feet. I always forget the hands, the feet, you know, and then I gotta go back and try and find the exact pencils I used. And that's the nice thing about doing a color along is you can hit the rewind button and see. But I want to go around the black or the eyes here with the black, leaving just a little bit of white. So none of him do I do like a solid black. It's definitely a mix of the tan and the black. So I go around the black with, you know, as his little paw sticks out, going around the ankles and on the underside of his feet. Is it just me or does it look like he has really big feet for how big he is? I don't know. I can't say anything. I can't draw a stick. So but I'm keeping my black really light because I feel like it's more of a grayish tone than an actual solid black, right? Some of the skin kind of shows through that black a little bit. So I'm giving him random dark spots. I'm shading a little darker here on the jowls. Underneath this little roll of skin there up at the front and the back, because that is a little roll of skin there. And then darkening up around the eyes. So I'm really just going back and forth between the beige and the black. And then with the little bandages, I'm just flicking color on the inside and outside edge of each bandage and then kind of blending it over. So I am going to set you to music and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm back. Let's color this bowl. Now I'm thinking black, just because honestly, I couldn't figure out what other color to color it. Because I've already got purple on the tablecloth. I didn't really want the orange because we had the big orange bowl right behind it, and I didn't want them to blend together. And then I had the color of the cups to consider, so I decided on a neutral. I thought about doing a brown, and I thought about doing a gray, like a silver almost. And instead I ended up just going with kind of the black cauldron kind of look. And once again, I'm leaving a little bit of a white spot for my highlight. And as I add in all of these colors, I'm going to leave that one open so that we have just some variance of color. Just kind of blending it out, working lightly, just multiple layers, just kind of blending. Now you could go in and go really dark black, but then it just, I don't know, it doesn't look as nice as if you do the layers, even if you do the same color. At least that's been my experience with these pencils so far. You can see I'm getting a relatively dark black here. This layer I'm going a little heavier, but once again not bearing down on the pencil, just adding multiple layers and keeping that blending spot light. Each time going in a little bit more. And then, eventually I'm going to cover over it because, I don't want like a big old white dot right there in the middle. But look how far back I push on my pencil. I am barely kissing the paper here. And then I go in and I'm just adding the layers. Extremely light layers. A layer of white along the edges to help kind of blend it out a little bit. And that white is blending that little bit of that gray to leave it a little lighter. Now, honestly, I could have spent a little more time and probably blended it out a little bit better looking at it now. Now here, my goal is that this is going to look kind of silver, like a silver bucket. So I go in black in the little crevices, our little shadow area, and then I'm going to work my way down. So I've got the darkest gray right next to that black. And then I'm going to go in with the next lightest. And I'm just working my way up incrementally. And you can see it almost starts to look dimensional. Now here I pop in with the white, because as I add that white to that gray, it kind of becomes all a light gray, but I feel like it kind of reads almost silver. Now with our tile, this is just kind of an experiment on my part. I go in with the gray, and then I'm going to go in with hay. Now these are both very light colors because I want to start conservatively because I've never done this before and I'm not sure exactly how it's going to turn out. So I pick a small inconspicuous area that I could put all in shadow if it turns out like trash, right? I could just really darken this area up and have it quote unquote disappear a little bit. But I'm using these warm and cool colors on the same tiles to give it kind of a unique look. Now, I wasn't loving how this turned out. So you'll see I do things a little differently when I move to the next segment. So if you're just watching this right now, take a pause and watch a few more minutes of the tile before you go in. It's not awful. It's just not how I end up doing the rest of the tile. This I'm adding it more to the corners, I'm blending it out, and it just didn't really feel right to me. So now I'm starting over on this other side, and once again I kind of start like I was doing it before and just blending it out, blending these darker colors out with the lighter colors. So then I get the idea, well, I'm going to go over it with the lighter colors first. And then I'm going to go in with my darker color, and I'm just almost scribbling, just squiggling, I would say, over each of the tiles. This is how I end up going with the vast majority of them. I like this look better. It looks more natural to me than those ones in the back corner. But I end up blending it all out enough that I don't feel like it sticks out like a sore thumb. But I do really like the cool grays with the warm grays, with the warm beiges. I feel like that mix, that French gray in there, really, I don't know, it works for me. I feel like it works better than if I would have just went with all brown tones or all gray tones. And here I try and adjust these to more this style, but you can see they're almost like a squiggle. Now these ones in the front got a little too squiggly and a little less dotty. It's a fine balance between squiggle and dot, if that makes sense. And then using the hay to blend it all out. You can see that it didn't really blend those out quite as much. And I don't get quite the natural look that I got, in that midsection between the goose's neck and the broom. That's where I like it the best. So I do a couple of things to try and smooth it out a little bit, adding in a little bit darker colors and then blending it again to make it look less squiggly because it was almost too patterned there. So I suggest you make like a squiggle motion, but lift your pencil as you go to where it's almost like baby squiggle dot type of thing. Or just baby squiggles, not the real bigger squiggles. See how these are? This is my favorite. And then doing the same thing with this khaki color. And then once again, I missed the little piece right there by the tablecloth, so I'm going to have to go back and do it later. So don't forget that. To the right of the little bunny, there's another little piece of tile. Also, there's a piece of tile above the bunny, just above her wing there. So don't be a Wendy. Do all the things while you got all your pencils out. Here I'm just adding a little bit more of that gray to that area back there just to try and unify my different styles. By adding another unifying element, even if they're done differently, it really makes a difference. So if you've kind of made an error somewhere, try and find a way to incorporate another coordinating thing, if that makes sense. Okay, for the final thing on this part, we're going to color these little pom-poms in with a little white, the light pink, and I'm not too concerned. I'm just dabbing in color because I'm going to go over these with stickles, but I do want the pink to show. So this is going to conclude part 2, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.